Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Motivate You, the Winner Circle, with your host, June Archer. I am so excited about my guest today. You've seen her on Marriage Bootcamp. And if you had the opportunity, if you were smart enough, you got her book, Bad Advice. Amazing author, #1 book. It can be found on Amazon.com. In the days that we're living in today, she has been doing some amazing things with people who are losing their jobs, with people who are trying to figure out how to maintain a sense of normalcy in their homes due to this coronavirus. So it was only right that we had the opportunity to get back together again for what is going to be another, I'm going to speak it into existence, another great interview. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show, Dr. Venus Nicolino. Dr. V, how are you doing today?
Fine. That was the most beautiful intro. So thank you so much for that. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you for being here. First, let me say thank you so much for what you've been doing for those who have been in need. I want to know, how are you and your family doing at this time?
We're doing okay. I mean, I think that some of us are experiencing some quarantine fatigue. People get tired of the same thing over and over and over again. So I know I've been experiencing a little bit of that. Uh, my husband was chewing this morning and I wanted to punch his fucking face in. So I realized in that moment of like, oh yeah, I'm feeling it. I'm really feeling it. I'm sure everybody else who's watching this and everybody else at home is feeling it too. So I empathize with that.
Well, I'm glad that you guys are doing good. And as I said at the top, you've been doing some amazing things. I want to talk about that, helping people out financially.
Yeah.
You've partnered up with some people just to be a blessing to other people. Tell us about how you came about doing that and how people are doing since you've been doing it.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I've worked with Tammy Rivera before on Marriage Bootcamp. Her and Waka Flocka had come on, and in a situation like that, it's a one-way situation. So you learn a lot about the other person, but the person doesn't really learn a lot about you. And basically, that's therapy in general, right? You sit and you tell someone a lot about yourself, and meanwhile, the other person doesn't have to disclose anything,
Right.
if they don't want to. So like just from starting there, she put up a clip of her talking about her struggle and where she had come from. And that was never revealed in our time on Marriage Boot Camp. And it was something new that I had heard from her. And I saw so much of my own struggle in her struggle.
Hmm.
And I want to point out that obviously those struggles are way different. Just being white alone, you come from privilege. So I want to really make
There's a
our viewers understand that I'm by no means equating these two different lives to be the same. But when you can see a piece of yourself in another person, that is something very special. And in hearing her story and the way she spoke about her story and the way she digested her story was very similar to how I had digested my own. Coming from one of five, sharing one bathroom, there was never really enough of anything. And the struggle was real. And in hearing Tammy's struggle, which was something I didn't know, given I had known so much about her, this came as a surprise to me. And it made me realize that just when you think you may know someone, you don't. So we always have to be working to be curious about our partner's inner life, our friends' inner life, their past. So not to drag on and on about that, but I had seen her clip and I had seen a piece of myself and my own struggles in her struggles, as well as how she digested those struggles. This idea of faith and hope and how that got her through. And I remember feeling those same, I'm sorry, I'm just going to start to cry. I remember feeling those same feelings as a young child. And so I had reached out to Tammy and I had said, your story really touched me. And by the way, that's a skill when people see pieces of themselves in you. Wouldn't you agree?
I
Like
agree. I
that's a
agree.
skill.
That's a
That's a
skill.
skill. That's the skill of vulnerability, that you're able to be so vulnerable that people begin to see themselves in you. And when that crosses race, gender, socioeconomic status, whatever divisions we put on ourselves, when that is able to punch through all of that and touch the heart of other people, that is a skill.
Yeah,
And
you're doing something at that point.
yeah, exactly. And so I reached out to Tammy, and we had always sort of had a little bit of communication back and forth about outfits and jewelry and girl stuff.
Right, the fun stuff.
Yeah, exactly, the fun stuff. And I had reached out to her and I said exactly what I had just said to you all about how while the struggles were slightly different, I relate to that, and I related to how um, I your come up, like I get it. And so I had said what I would like to do. You have a much larger platform than me, Tammy, and I think it would be beneficial to the community um, if we could get cash in people's hands um, in a very real way. I mean, social media is the best way to do that. And so we had committed to $500 every single Friday. And what has come out of that is, number one, people get to hear other people's stories. And there is a great power in sharing your struggle with other people. People write out their struggle, and that alone helps people digest what's happening in their life in a different way. Just the act of, here's my story, let me write it out.
Right.
And June, when I tell you, people, the empathy and the hopefulness of other people is inspiring, not only to those people, but to both Tammy and I. So not only is it about putting cash in people's hands, $500 every Friday until we can't do it anymore. It's really about spreading hope and faith and empathy. The 2 weeks ago, what ends up happening is we announce the winner and then Tammy goes live with that person. And it's fucking beautiful to see people feel, it's almost like they care about the cash, but they just care that someone heard them,
That's
right?
not even cared enough to even reach out
Right.
to offer them something.
And and then on top of that, the reason why we chose her is because she had written on two other struggling single mom. She had read their story and it said, if I win, I want you to know that I'm going to give you some of mine. And I'm not asking for the same in return. I want you to know that. And that's spreading love and empathy and hope and care. And she gave those two other women some of her $500.
Wow.
Like, I mean, come on.
So
So
just that act alone is infectious, that people are now paying it forward and paying it back just based on what
yes,
you and Mama Tammy have been doing.
yes. So it's this really, and people now will comment in the threads of, just being heard made me feel better. Like, thank you for a place to put this. because what ends up happening in a lot of those, in a lot of situations, people ignore someone's story. I try my best to go through every single person and offer, like, let them know that I saw this. I hear you. I see this. Like, blessings. And maybe if I can help in that moment of a specific situation, I might even give a little piece of advice if it's warranted. You know what I mean? A lot of people don't fucking want to hear your advice. They just,
Right.
what I mean by that is offer support, like to offer support. And in doing so, when you offer people support and a place to feel held by other people,
Yes.
they then feel the need to also be helpful to their community. So I think that there's something really beautiful and really special about that. And in the beginning, it started as a very small, beautiful seed. I see a piece of myself in you. How can we help other people? And by the way, Tammy and I were the first people who started doing this. Then everybody else
Everyone else
jumped up.
started it.
Now everybody else is doing it. So, and by the way, that's great. But I want to point out we were the first. So.
And I think that's important. Two things, Dr. V. You are from day one, when we first met and had the opportunity to sit down and have some dialogue, you have always been that person who would respond to people in the feed with something, a little piece of inspiration, a little piece of motivation, even a little hello or an emoji. You've always been that. So I want to say thank you for being that for so many people. For you, how important, you just talked about you seeing yourself in Tammy's story and what you guys are doing. How important is it for people to be as transparent as they possibly can, knowing that they can be helping someone, they can be saving someone's life just by seeing I am not the only one who's been going through this. I'm not the only one who has been down and out, but someone has found a way. Someone has come from up under something. And now that I know that they have done it, I potentially have the opportunity to do the exact same.
Yeah. I mean, whatever inspires people, right? Whatever that way in for inspiration, that we all struggle in our own ways. And I think that what you're saying is very important. That feeling of, look, today we don't really have, when you and I were young, June, like, I don't know in your neighborhood, but in my neighborhood, the houses were all connected. We were on the western edge of Philly. And the neighbors looked out for all the kids, right? In my neighborhood. I mean, neighbors whipped other kids. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
like that was like
It was a village. The village concept was real.
Yeah, the village concept was real. And I don't know, I grew up at a time like that where we called upon our neighbor Isabel to help in any way we could, and vice versa. And when we would hear her, yelling at the kids, we would bang on the wall, and so there was a feeling of community and hopefulness. But I also want to say there also was a feeling that problems were unsolvable because of where we were in the economic spectrum, because of where we were in society. And so there wasn't really enough of anything to go around. And so when you add that pressure to communities in need and people in need, the emotional and mental toll, you can't even be inspired. So I want to make that clear, that it isn't like, oh, I'm going to be inspired and I'm going to get up and do great things. And,
Right.
yeah, like fuck that. Like, man, I get it. Like, I understand that kind of economic pressure, social rejection, um, can be paralyzing, absolutely paralyzing. So I want our listeners and our viewers to know that if you're going through that right now, the world needs you. The world needs you. And if you can't for yourself, look around to the people around you, to the community around you, and see a need and fill that need if you can. Because at the end of the day, we are cooperative creatures.
Yeah.
I don't buy into the bullshit that other people want to tell you that we are warlike creatures. That is absolutely anthropologically wrong,
Mhm.
scientifically wrong, and biologically wrong. We are cooperative humans. And so when we cooperate with another human, what does that mean? That means in some way of being of service. Um, Biologically, your brain gets some hits of dopamine, some hits of serotonin, and some other really feel good chemicals.
Right.
So if you want to feel good immediately, if you want to feel good, help somebody else. And that doesn't mean financial, that doesn't mean doing something physical. It can be support, it can be supportive. And, people often ask me, like, how did you get into this field? And it really was that sitting on my stoop at night, listening to other people's problems, the facts behind the feelings behind the facts, and their hopelessness that these problems were unsolvable. And I remember at a very young age, June, you're giving me a lot of space to talk here. So just shut me
Oh
up
no, no,
anytime.
this is perfect. Listen, because I'm gonna talk about it in your book. There's one that says, "Just be yourself." Just be yourself right now. Because I think people now more than ever, Dr. V, they need to hear this. I'm hanging on your every word. I'm someone who am always glass half full. But I want those who need it now in this moment during COVID, and even when we get out of this COVID situation, there are our medical professionals, the people who have been on the front line, who mental health is going to be something that's going to be ongoing at least for the next 12 to 18 months, even after these numbers go down. So I trust me, please, you have the space, we have the platform. I appreciate you sharing it. So
Thank
please.
you. So they were talking about at a very young age, I had thought to myself, these problems are not unsolvable. We can do something about this. We can all put our heads together and support each other and figure this shit out, because we can do something. And so I that's really how I got into this work, was listening to my family and neighborhood members and the members of my community talk about their struggles and what they were going through and the hopelessness that they felt at that time. And me on the other side of that, like, no, we can do something. We can do something together. So anyway, but going back to what you had said about mental health at this time, um, we should have always been focusing on mental health, always. And somehow, um, we don't. We don't focus on mental health.
Do you believe,
Particularly,
because of the stigma attached to it, do you believe it's pride and ego that doesn't allow us to admit that we really need help in this area and focus on that area?
well, look, um, I think that it's important to point out, when someone is working two jobs, trying to put food on the table, taking care of the kids, trying to figure out how to survive, your mental health becomes a privilege, right?
Right.
Your mental health becomes, you don't have time to sit around and, be introspective of your thoughts and your emotions. But that's also a myth. That's also a myth, because your feelings and what you're going through and what you are dealing with is a mental health crisis, right? How you're surviving these incredible struggles and the struggle to survive is about your mental health. So I think that because the concept of mental health started by Freud. I don't want to bore our audience. But the concept of psychotherapy was started by Freud and was peddled to the very privileged people in the community. Now, we've come so far to be able to deliver mental health in a way that is palatable for other communities.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because I'll tell you, in my experience, and I can only talk from my own, women of color, men of color have a tendency to turn away from mental health. And I believe because it was first started and peddled to privileged white people. So that this connection to mental health, they just don't have,
Right.
And in some way, while again, I'm a white girl, I can get that, because I remember my father saying, who has time to be depressed? Who has time to be anxious? Like, just get up and do it. Stop thinking about all this stuff. You have stuff to do. And while you're doing all that stuff, your mental health is suffering. And you could be doing those things in different kinds of ways. You could be reimagining your life in a different kind of way if you were in the proper headspace. So the working class mentality is one of, I don't got time to worry about that shit.
Right. The day is long.
Right.
Who's got to do? We have
like who's got time? Who's got time for that? Right. Now, they used to say that about, this is like a strange parallel, but it's something that I've thought about often. And if I don't talk about it well now, please excuse me, because it's always been a thought, not like nothing I've ever actually like spoken out about.
Hey, well, look, in the famous words of Chris Cuomo, let's get at it. Let's get after it.
And like, when you think about it, people used to think of breast examinations in the very same way.
Okay.
You would only go, a woman of privilege would only go and get a mammogram, because that's what she was able to worry about, those kinds of things.
Right.
Do we think about that now? No, we don't.
No.
Women are told insurance companies will pay. There's places where you can get it for free. So this myth of it being attached to a very specific population is not true anymore. That now has it's been talked about so much, and the concern is so great that we see every woman from every walks of life, from every different socioeconomic status, going and getting a breast exam. We don't argue that fact, right?
Right.
And so in many ways, some of my goals in life is to help communities see mental health the way we see boobs.
I don't think you get a fight or any pushback from a certain,
how can you?
a grandiose part of the population. But I think, Dr. V, and correct me if I am wrong, educate me, there are people of color who, when you talk about, hey, listen, I think you need to go to see someone, go to a psychiatrist, talk to someone, that the pushback has always been, hey, no, you don't go tell anybody your business. Like, you figure that out on your own. they'll start to think that you're crazy. What is the holdup? What is the pride and ego in not going to someone to kind of just help you hash this stuff out? Just really just having someone that will listen to you.
Well, I mean, you said it yourself. It's pride and ego and generations of, you know, shut up. No, but your problems don't matter. Generations of that. And so I think for some people, it's almost built into the fabric of who they are. And we also, when you have a society that tells you
Right.
you're not sick, you're just black, that's fucked up. You see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So the darker you are, um, the less worthy society believes you are of mental health. So the kid who goes shoots up the school, the white kid who goes shoots up the school, he needs mental health. He has a mental health problem, right?
Right.
But
But the darker ones that shoot each other or shoot after
they're
each other every
terrorists.
day.
They're terrorists. They're domestic terrorists. They're criminals. So you see this very apparent divide, and that needs to change. And the people who need to change that are the white folks, right? Because in order to help other people, the people who have power have to help other people.
Right. But
Does
is
that
it
make
real?
sense?
Is it really just them, or should there be a concerted effort of people of color who want to get help as well? Because there's only so much you can help people who don't want any help.
I agree with you that yes, we each have responsibility to not only ourselves but the people around us. I'm just very aware of the social context in which people deny mental health.
Okay.
And then on top of that, when someone goes, okay, so let's just say that man you were talking about, the pride, the ego, I'm just going to say he's a man because
Right.
it felt like a man.
Right.
The pride, the ego of that. So let's just say he contemplates the thought of like, maybe talking to someone would be a good idea.
Mhm.
And by the way, I want to point out that the first people who really began I don't want to say psychotherapy, but the supportive process was the church. You would go to your priest in the confessional.
That's true.
No one sees you,
That's
you
true.
know? So a lot of times in communities, they will see God as their savior, right? They see God as a supportive system, and I do too as well. But when you send that man who prideful and ego, and he's like, all right, I think that maybe I'm gonna use God as well as the services around me. Where can he get those services?
Right.
Where? It is so
It's
difficult
hard.
to find free mental health services in communities. It's so difficult. And so not only are these prideful, or you were saying, maybe egotistical people, they're fighting a system, but they're also, when they give into this, they give into that and they say, you know what, I am going to go and talk to someone. There's nowhere to go. There are no services for that person. Do you see what I'm saying?
Right. I understand.
So I think that whenever I talk to someone about mental health and the possibility of seeking out mental health services, I make sure that I have called a facility beforehand, that they have some room, that they are taking patience for free before I even say that to someone. Because what you don't want to do is say, you need help, go get help. This person steps outside of the social box, steps outside of the social system, puts down their ego, puts down their pride, and now there's no services. Guess what that does? It reinforces the system.
Right. It sets them up for failure and
Yes.
confirms exactly why they didn't want to do it in the first place.
Exactly.
I want to talk about, besides staying away from each other during this COVID pandemic, what are some keys to success? What are some tools that couples can practice during this period to make sure? Because at this point, depending on who you are, depending on your sex drive, I'm certain that sex has now been overrated. No one wants to do it anymore. Like you've been there, done that already. Maybe a couple times over. But what are some things that couples can do now that you and your husband may be doing, or rules and laws that you've enforced in your home during this time that couples can actually use to kind of continue on? Because it looks like we still have a few weeks, maybe even a few months left in this thing. What are some key things that we could be doing to strengthen our relationships?
Well, during this time, it's so important to suss out whether they're roommate issues or relationship issues, because
Wow.
those two things are very different.
Wow.
So I personally, we're all going through this together. So maybe my personal experience matters, maybe it doesn't. It's only natural in this kind of situation when people are living on top of each other to feel resentful of the people around you. So it's so important to acknowledge that everything you're feeling is right and valid and appropriate given the scenario.
Okay.
The next thing I want to say is roommate issues versus relationship issues, because I can't tell you, June, people now are connecting the two, and they're not connected. My husband annoying chewing is not connected to my relation. It's a roommate issue. Go chew in the other fucking room, right?
Right.
It's a roommate issue. So we have to really think about, and I don't even like the word, the new normal. I think that's a little bit silly, but to be thinking about when we address how we're feeling about our relationships, that we're clear that we're not making roommate issues into marital problems. Does that make sense?
Makes sense. That makes sense.
So that's one thing.
There's plenty of spillover.
Oh, right. Exactly. So that's one thing, is to really, when you're pissed off and you're resentful of the people around you and everybody sucks. And by the way, I am queen of this. I just want to let you know, I do this when we're not in quarantine. So it's like, I can't stand these motherfuckers. Like, so I get it, it's so important to recognize that what we are doing, quarantining, is unnatural for humans. It's unnatural for us. So we're going to be experiencing a lot of feelings that are built upon frustration.
Right.
So that's one.
And there's no place to go, right? Because I know you've talked about it. You hear it all the time. You hear it when you're getting married and people are giving you advice. Communication is key. Make sure you communicate. At this point,
shut the fuck up. I don't care what you have to say.
We've been doing this thing for about 8, 9, 10 weeks, right? People are like, communication is like out the window now, like, because you can say what you want to say, but you can't leave. You can't go out the door blowing steam off. You're not going anywhere, right?
No.
So maybe some part of the house, and for some people that are in an apartment, there's really no place to go. Like, how important is it to communicate the right things at this time?
Well, it's always important to communicate the right things. Now more than ever, as you were saying, it is important to communicate love and respect and a feeling of unity. And that can only happen with compassion, right? With empathy. So we're coming full circle. You begin to see yourself in someone else, right? So when you're living under extreme stress, you know, that goes out the window.
Right.
You know, you hate that motherfucker. They're your villain. So it would be prudent during this time to not vilify the people in our lives. And I also want to take a moment that while spaces may be small, you can escape in your own mind. You can find a place within this small space that is yours, that you're able to sit down, cross your legs, lay down, whatever it is, put on your headphones and listen to soothing things. You can escape. My favorite thing to do is I escaped in my car. I go in my car and I sit there. It's a vacation.
Right.
It's a whole new vacation for me. And then I want to add with a very big eye roll, because when I say this word, and I think you know what I'm going to say, like I want to eye roll myself into another universe when people tell me to meditate. Shut up. Like, shut up.
You're done with meditating.
But I do want to say, June, that now, like why? Like why do we attach some negativity to that word? Oh, I'm gonna like levitate and meditate. It sounds silly during these times. It sounds silly when you're trying to put food on the table, when you're, you know, working and you're trying to survive. Oh, I'm gonna sit around and meditate. The answer is yes, because now with guided meditation, it's 5 minutes of your time. 5 minutes to put in your headphones, no, or if you don't even have those, on your phone, and just escape for 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, June, your mind will shift. Now, my favorite is Chell Hamilton. I love her.
Okay.
Her mini meditations are like nothing else. And it's more prudent than ever during this time to take the time to self-care. Once you begin that small forward step to self-care, it builds on itself and it builds on itself and it builds and it builds until you are doing things for your mind, your body, and your spirit that you never thought to do.
Right.
And if you don't like the word meditating, I would like to say it's a form of prayer. It's a form of beautiful prayer. And when we pray, whether we're praying to Jesus Christ, Allah, whoever your God is, that is a form of meditation, praying. So I think that it's very important that we're able to experience silence and experience our own thoughts, whether that's through meditation or whether that's through prayer.
I want to jump over to the marriage boot camp piece. And the past season, you had the opportunity to interact with a very good friend of mine, Styles P, and his beautiful wife. But I want to ask you, for you, what has been the most beautiful thing that you've taken away from being a host and practitioner on that platform?
The biggest thing I have taken away, again, is how a community can help other people. The beauty of that kind of setup, which I don't necessarily know, June, if we'll ever see that again. Will we ever see people living in a house together for 14 days now? Like, think about all that will change going forward due to the pandemic. Well, like, will we ever see that kind of setup again? I don't know. But what I think the most positive thing that I have seen come out of that is the power of the people around the couple or the individual helping, because someone else's experience of you is incredibly important information. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm.
no one goes to the self-help section because they want to hear, I don't want to say negative things about themselves, but maybe truthful things about
Think
themselves
about themselves, right?
that they're not willing to face. They're going to the self-help section to have validity of what they're feeling already, right?
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like, no one
Right.
like strolls to the self-help section being like, you know what, I'm really an asshole. Let me try to figure this out. You know what I mean? Let me read up on this. But you know what will tell you you're an asshole is another person.
Right. Who knows you?
Who knows you, who's been living with you for a couple days, who's been experiencing you for
Yeah.
the last 24 hours
Yeah.
and has had it. And so you're able, if you can, and in this setup, like in the marriage bootcamp setup, you're able to take in information about yourself that you otherwise would never take in, because not just one person sees it, but an entire house full of people see it.
Mm.
They all can't be wrong. One person may be wrong, but when other people begin to see, hey, you come off as defensive. No, I don't. Like, that's always the typical. They defend themselves.
Yeah.
Um,
I've,
but
I've
you know
been
what I mean?
guilty
But
of it.
right. I mean, we all are. But when you have a group of people telling you the same thing, you're then you have no other choice but to be like, huh, this is this could be true. This is something that I might want to look at. And I can't tell you, June, how many people contact me months later, years later, who have been on that show and have said, I'm just getting it now. I'm
Wow.
just understanding it now. So insight doesn't necessarily lead to change, right?
Right. Not
But when
immediately.
you're
Not be immediately.
exactly, but people digest information and make changes in their lives in their own way. And so that to me is beautiful. And then, of course, when people stop me on the street and they're like, listen, you have changed the way I have been able to communicate. Listen, understand, and validate. Like, when you're stopped on the street and people tell you that you've enhanced their lives and their communication and their relationships, that's a beautiful thing. So that's just, a little bit of that touches my heart. So
That's a beautiful thing. Now I want to only because I love this book, and I want to just as we talked before, I want to just get in just a touch of the book here. Once again, for those who are watching, listening, Bad Advice by Dr. Venus Nicolino. If you can, no matter how good or bad a single day is, you will outlast it. I want to talk about that because you in this part of the chapter you talk about emotions come and go, whether it's through writing, uh, another medium, or even just talking to someone else about how you feel. Exploring and expressing your feelings of betrayal helps you accept those feelings and empowers you. Um, if you could just give us a little piece of just overall, once again, why this book was so important. To so many people, and I found it very useful myself. Uh, why did you write the book in the first place, Dr. V?
I wrote the book because I was tired of hearing a lot of bullshit advice. And we say bullshit advice because we're taught to say it. You know, every mother will say, you'll be nervous about a job interview. You'll be nervous about meeting someone. You'll be nervous about going to kindergarten. You'll be nervous about going to college. Every mother or father has said at some point, just be yourself. Is that what you need to hear when you're anxious and you're feeling overwhelmed? Being myself, June, is the last thing I want to be.
I want to do.
You know, look, that means I'm going to shit myself because I'm so nervous. Like, I don't want to be myself. Or you can't love anyone until you love yourself. Really? Because I love a lot of people with a ton of self-hatred, just so you know. It is possible to love other people. And it describes a sequence of events. Like, first I love me, then I love you. And by loving me, I mean I love me the most. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't even make sense. And yet we peddle this bullshit over and over and over again. And so I wanted to write a book that addresses this nonsense. And maybe changes your worldview just a little bit. And when I read a book, when I'm inspired, whether it's a great inspiration or maybe it's not so great inspiration, right? Like inspiration doesn't have to be all positive. You can be inspired and be angry. You can be inspired and be helpful. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect sense.
The books that I have read that have inspired me, that have touched me in some way, have shifted my worldview just a little bit. It was knowledge that I didn't have before, or that I thought about in a different way. And that to me is a successful read. So my hope with the book is, number one, to make you laugh, because people take in information about themselves and in general information when they're laughing. It's easier to get it in the mouth
Definitely.
when you're laughing. So it's a super lighthearted read, mixed with like when you say science and research, people automatically like go to sleep. But it's mixed in with a little bit of fun, science and research. It was I think it was voted on the New York Post, the top 5 books that'll change your life without making you feel like shit. So that is pretty good.
That's really good.
I don't want to make you feel like shit, you know?
No, I can say the other day I put out a post on Instagram, as I do daily, just to inspire and motivate people. And it just came to me days before, like, you know what? There are people out there that don't always want to see you do good. So you have to be careful who you get bad advice from. And in this book, there's plenty of bad advice that people give you daily, that if you take it literal sometimes, if you take it for face value sometimes, it will put you on the other end of the coin, on the other side of the coin. If we want to be positive, people are afraid to share their feelings because of getting bad advice. So I think this book is super important. Now,
I saw that post, and I really, I'm a person who I want to know, like, the story. I want to know, like, I was so intrigued by what you had written, and this is a really great time to shed the toxicity from our lives. And sometimes that could be other people, right? People are toxic. Because there should be no one you are coming in contact with who doesn't want to see you succeed. Like, everyone in your life,
100%,
who you invite in, should want to see you succeed.
Right. But that is the act, though, Dr. V, that you invite in. So we have to hold ourselves accountable for who we let in.
Yes.
In hopes that these people want to see you do well. And I think now is the perfect time, because if no one has been reaching out to you to see how you are doing or your family is doing, and if you don't feel compelled to reach out to anybody, therein lies where your relationships or friendships are. Because this person didn't mean that much to you for the past 8 weeks.
Well, June, let's not be so hard on people,
All right.
because I'll tell you, some people right now, maybe, you know, in the midst of a crisis, sure, we get a snapshot of someone's character. We get to see who someone is when the chips are down. That being said, there are people who may not be reaching out because they're dealing with their own depression, their own anxiety, their own. If you are compelled to reach out to them, then do it, right? So it's not just what we're receiving in terms of the information, but what we're putting out. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, because just because someone didn't reach out to you during this time doesn't mean they're a toxic person. It could mean that they're a person who's in trouble, and it's okay to check in on them too, right?
The phone works both ways.
Exactly.
I definitely agree. I definitely agree. Dr. V, you are a blessing. You are a beacon of light, inspiration, motivation. Please tell Mama Tammy, love to have her on the show. Love to,
Yes.
however we could support what she's been doing and continue to inspire people to, long after you guys have been doing it, that other people continue to motivate and inspire people and reach back, reach forward, pay it forward, pay it back, whatever it is that they can do. Please get this book. I promise you it'll change your life. Bad Advice by Dr. V. It's on Amazon. You can find it if you really want it. If you want to change your life, please do. Dr. V, where can they find you? Where can we follow you? And what's up next for you?
No, first of all, June, I just wanted to say thank you so much for this interview. And I love your interview style. And I just want to say thank you. And I also want to apologize if I rambled on.
Not at all. Thank you.
You give people lots of space, so I never know when to shut up. The last time we did this, I thought the same thing too. I'm like, fuck, that June, he just gives people all this space. So I want to thank you, because very rarely are we able to have like real conversations where we're able to unpack a lot of different things. So I want to thank you for providing me the space and other people the space to listen and take from it what you think will be helpful and throw out the rest. So I want to thank you for that. People can find me. This is always a brain teaser for me, these handles. So people can find me on Instagram. It's at Dr._V_, right? I think.
Right.
And you can find me at Dr. V Tweet. And I think that's all. Yeah, that's it. Or Venus Nicolino. There's a Dr. V page on Facebook as well. But just Google me or reach out to me, and anyone can find me.
Listen, ladies and gentlemen, you got it. It's Dr. V. Please love her, like what she's doing, support her. Hopefully we get it out of this thing as soon as possible. We can see another episode of Marriage Bootcamp somewhere, whatever else, because you should have another show. I don't care what they say. There should be another show.
Oh, I love you for that.
So if it's not in the works, I'm going to speak that into existence. And I hope to be watching it and supporting it and being able to get you back on so we could support it. But please, ladies and gentlemen, please support Dr. V. Like this interview, love it. Share it with somebody who is in need, not only today, but sometime in the near future where they may be going through something. And I promise you, this will be a blessing to them. Dr. V, thank you so much. This is June Archer for the Winner Circle and Motivate You. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Thank you, June.